episode 4. Today we are joined by Dr. Maggie Helliwell, ex-GP, who worked in the NHS for over 50 years. She'll reflect on her career and inspirations. This is a multi-generational reflection, starting with Maggie's early life and inspiration from her parents, through to present day and how the landscape for women in leadership has changed from then and now. In the interviewer seats today, we are joined again by Dr. Claire Mould. And in Chim's absence, we are joined by Dr. Amelia Randall, GP at Glastonbury Health Centre, who will no doubt share some experiences that Maggie has shared in her profession too. Without further ado, we hope you enjoy the episode.
Thanks, Jade. Hi, everyone. I'm Amelia Randall. I'm a GP at Glastonbury Health Centre in Somerset, and I also have a couple of clinical leadership roles working for SWAG Cancer Alliance and being regional clinical advisor for urgent care in the Southwest region. I'm really particularly focused at the moment in how we can integrate primary care strategy with cancer and urgent care strategy, which is really all about how we can support GPs to recover from a lot of the challenges over recent years. So I'm really excited to be having the opportunity to speak to Maggie today, because I think we've got lots that we'll be able to learn.
So welcome, Maggie. My name is Claire Mould. I'm Director of Curve Strategic and also CEO of Heart of England MenCap, and work predominantly across health and social care. And my particular passion and focus is compassionate leadership and emotional intelligence and working with teams. I'll get the ball rolling then. So welcome, Maggie, and it's wonderful, and you're sort of fast becoming a friend of ours that we're very pleased to have you at our conference, and it's with absolute delight that even though we did put you on the spot at the conference and asked you in a public forum whether you would agree to do this, but we are thrilled that you we're absolutely thrilled that you did agree to do this. Do we start just by sort of enabling those people that don't already know you to get to know you a little bit more? Tell us a little bit about your life that's brought you to this place, not from the career side, but just about who you are and where you're living, and a little bit of backstory for people.
I'm living in Yorkshire. My husband was born 5 miles down the road, so he's come home. I haven't, but I have been here for more than 40 years. So it is home, but I'm what's known in the trade as an off-Cumdon to Yorkshire. I was brought up in the 1950s, and so I'm a post-war girl. I actually remember the end of rationing. I remember when petrol was, I think it was 5 shillings a gallon. You understand that I come from a really long way past, and a lot of progression since then. I'm from a chain of, as I said in my speech at the conference, I'm from a chain of managers, and I didn't realise that until I wrote it all down. All the men from great-grandparent down to my father were all senior managers in one organisation and another, but all of them in public service. But the female side of the family either stayed at home or were thwarted in that they all had to leave work when they got married, or in my and that was virtually every one of them in 4 generations. Also weren't given the educational opportunities that I was given as a first wave grammar school pupil. So there was a lot of high expectation on me as the eldest in the family to do well, to succeed. And also my mother, I think in particular, wanted what she never had. She was very bright, but her brother went to university, but her father thought it was a waste of time. But she did go into the library profession, so she did follow her intellect, but not in any sort of long-term way at that point, because she had to when she got married, she had to leave work and had me. So that's my background, and that was in the Midlands. That was in Leicester. I was the first one, as I've said, to go into the 6th form, first female to go into the 6th form, first female to go to university, and the first female that didn't have to give up my job when I got married. And he applied for medical school, still don't know why. because I always wanted to be a doctor. I just know that it was something I wanted to do. And of course, my parents encouraged me. And it was at the time when it was only a 5% intake of women in medical school. So the odds were stacked against me. And there were 4 other girls in my grammar school who applied at the same time. And I was the only one that got in. And I still don't know why. The other thing to say is, you didn't need to be an A-star student in those days. They wanted a bit more, I'm not saying that A-star students aren't all round, but it didn't matter that I wasn't absolutely A-star, because I did lots of other things, and they were looking for qualities, I think, in the things we talk about in management, which are empathy and contact. And I think I did a good interview, but I think those were the things that got me there. So that's my sort of introduction into a professional life, which the female side of my family had never had the opportunity to pursue.
Thank you for setting the scene, and I think it's really, really encouraging, and we can learn some lessons there from the fact of actually looking at the qualities that we need rather than just academic qualifications. Cheeky sort of supplementary question, and I sort of open the floor also to Amelia. Maggie, if you don't know, but 5% intake in medical school. Do either of you know what the percentage of women that go into medical school now is?
Well, I do. It's over 50, isn't it?
Over
I
50.
think. Yeah, it's over 50.
Yeah.
We now outnumber the men. I think that's right,
Right.
isn't it, Amelia?
I think so. Yeah. There's
Completely turned on its head when I was there. I was the complete exception.
That ratio is not reflected throughout the career path, though, I would say.
Yes, and there are absolutely, and in particular specialities. So in general practice, it's coming that the proportion is getting closer to 50%. But in surgery, what I would call the hard hospital specialities, there are huge barriers, and also attitudes that are still ancient and dinosaur-like in progression of women in medicine. I can say that because there is evidence-based theory papers about it.
And how about, obviously you've had a really fascinating career and lots of non-clinical roles as well, in particular your work in NICE.
Yes.
So I'd love to hear, particularly for me as a female GP in a similar position at this sort of earliest stages of looking at my leadership, what have your experiences, what drew you to that sector, and what have been your experiences as a woman, presumably fairly pioneering as well?
I think I've been very lucky, a lot of serendipity. So I initially got into management in the early 90s. I rode the wave of fund holding. Interestingly, the fact that I was working part-time and was job sharing with somebody actually gave me opportunity to do something else in the other half if I had the capacity to do it. My whole community, Keighley, at the beginning of fund holding, there was a visionary GP who thought, well, let's all, instead of all being isolated and fighting each other about what we do with our patients, let's all get together. It really early commissioning by GPs. Let's get together as a pilot fund holding group rather than just individual practices. And I was the only GP in my practice, which was 3 men and 3 women. So even in those days was absolutely revolutionary, but quietly revolutionary. I was the only one that was free to go to the meeting. And from that one meeting in the early 90s, I spent time then on that side and got chosen by the group to be the chair. Again, partly because I had the time, a little bit of time to do it. And then everything went on from there. Because we were one of the only 4 total fund holding pilots in the country, we had national interest. So I became the spokesperson for the group at meetings, and they built up a reputation which must have been reasonable, so that when other opportunities came up, that I thought, oh, that would be a good idea, or seemed a natural progression as all the developments in organisation in the NHS change every 3 or 4 years, then I just rode the wave of the next iteration. From chair of the Worth Valley Health Consortium, I became chair of the PCG, and then I became the chair of the clinical group on the PCT, and built up my skills, because at the same time, particularly at the beginning, I was being offered all sorts of managerial courses. Right at the beginning of the total fund holding, I was in a national group, and we were meeting every 2 months, and I was being given skills and reflecting and having to get up and talk. And I went to women-only groups, both regionally and nationally. One run by Chris Ham in Birmingham, and another one run by the Yorkshire Regional Health Authority at that time. So that I was quietly taking up every opportunity that I wanted to in terms of my progression. But it was also, I think, back to being one of the only women in the room, and meeting up with people who are also the only women in the room, being given opportunities that I suspect aren't there now. My advice is just keep going, pick up the skills that you are offered. Also look for training. I went into my filing cabinet last night and had a look and found a course about change management that I'd done 20 years ago. As Hugo Massey-Taylor had done something on doctors dealing with dilemmas, because as you well know, Amelia, what we do in our practices every day of the week is management of our team, £1 million business in most cases and more. And we're managing our patients with all those same skills that are actually incredibly transferable. That's how I got where I got. And also, I've always done a lot of writing and always done a lot of reflecting, and always tried to keep up with my education. I love books. I love art. I would, if I really had wanted to do what I was good at, I would have done humanities. So I did a medical and humanities course, which of course comes in every day in general practice as well. To just be focused on your medicine and your facts and your skills isn't enough. You have to know about people.
I love that. It's about the whole sort of the broader thing of developing as you're in, finding your own self as a doctor, and understanding your sort of style and purpose as a doctor. That's one of the lovely things about medicine, isn't it? That we're all so different, and how we can nurture that in each other. I think it's really important.
I would advise any manager to do a short seminar on consultation skills, because that actually really teaches you how to listen, how to deal with people, how to deal with anger, how to deal with bullying in someone else, how to learn how to handle people, because that's what we're doing every day of the week in both jobs.
Can we just talk a little bit about your NICE role as well? I'd love to hear about that.
I like working near to home. So because I'd partly organised the original consortium, the offices were in our practice on the top floor. So that made it very easy for me to walk up and down the stairs. And then when we became a PCG, we bought a building which was opposite our surgery. So I just walked around. And then as reorganisation changed what was happening, where I had to work got further and further away. So I was having to do an 1.5-hour journey in order to be the one of the medical leads in the PCT in Bradford. Whereas before, time management, I'd walked up the stairs, or I'd walked across the road. And I would always recommend trying to find all your jobs as close as possible if you're running several, because otherwise you're wasting time. So it happened that I was driving, and I didn't like the larger organisation. It wasn't for me. 3 floors in an old converted mill, as opposed to the top floor in my practice, wasn't quite the same. And also, I did not want to be medical director of the huge PCT. I just really didn't want to do it. Even though, so I took myself out of that. I went for 2 jobs. One advertised in the BMJ, and one of them advertised locally. And I got them both. They were both theoretically part-time, though, as you well know, everybody well knows, part-time does not mean part-time in any job. I also wanted to change. I also wanted to do something different. And so they were absolutely revolutionary in their desire to be joined up with primary care. So there'd always been a lot of joint working. And they actually wanted someone from primary care to be a deputy medical director in terms of supporting the medical director, but also bringing other skills which I could bring, which was performance, which I'd done GP performance. I'd been a medical director. I was clinical governance. I actually became Caldecott Guardian in the end. So I brought a lot of skills. So I did that, and that was theoretically only going to be 2 days a week. I was by that time only working 2 days a week in general practice because things had expanded in PCT land, and I knew I could do it. So I applied for the nice job. And I'd done a lot of work with exceptional cases, the ones where we had to fund people asking for treatment that's outside normal commissioning. And so I had a good background in making decisions that NICE does all the time about whether a treatment is good effective treatment and is reasonable. And I had the governance background. I had done heaps of commissioning. I had a very broad range of knowledge. Particularly, I was on the regional cancer commissioning group. So there were lots of things that made me a very broad-based candidate. So I went for the interview and got it. And that was that. And I got 2 phone calls the same week. And I thought, well, can I really do them both, as well as being a GP 2 days a week? So I went cap in hand to the practice and said, can I go down to 1 day a week? And they said yes, because by that time I was part of the furniture. And then I did both jobs, which were each of them were theoretically 2 days. I think the deputy medical director job was 2 days a week. NICE was supposed to be 5 days a month. That's a joke, because it really is, because if you get involved and you get involved in the committees and you're going back and forwards to London and Manchester, you start to be doing sometimes 2 and 3 days, never mind 5 days a month. Well, all my jobs have been wonderful, but the London job, the NICE job, was just amazing, because the breadth of knowledge that everybody brought from different fields, and just the aim and the ethos, the teamwork, was just fabulous. Best thing I ever did for 8 years. Just answer the advert in the BMJ and you might get it. Take up opportunities. That was one of the things I really felt was important. Don't think that you can't do it. Think you might be able to do it, and somebody might like you, and you might get the job. But if you don't apply, you'll never get the job.
Amazing. And so, have there been any people along your journey that have particularly inspired you or sort of advised you on the way?
My parents, my father did the equivalent of what I did with libraries. He ran Leicester City Libraries and was on national. He actually was on the committee that formed the British Library. So he had done exactly. It was weird how eventually my career almost mirrored his. So he'd obviously quietly in my head been someone who was a mentor, constantly giving me advice, constantly marking my homework, constantly pushing me to do as much as I could. He had very high standards of public service and duty. you got on with the job, you worked hard, you did your best. And then my mother, of course, didn't have the same opportunities as me initially, but then went back and did an open university degree, ended up a senior lecturer in a university, and finally in retirement, because my dad said, stop whinging about these terrible books you're reading, write one yourself, wrote 40 Mills and Boons. And she was a historian and loved writing, and sold 2.3 million copies of her books, and they're still in print, and I still get the royalties. So I had constantly that that example of you never stop.
There is certainly an element of you make your own luck. You take those opportunities. You never stop going. You carry on. So share with us then, Maggie, what are you working on at the moment? What are you busy doing? What are you reflecting on? What are you proactively taking opportunities to do at the moment?
In terms of medicine, very little, other than commenting on Twitter in a very sensible way, and about everything that's happening in the NHS at the moment, which is just making me personally very sad. I know I have the best of general practice. I hope it can get back to what it was. So in terms of business, I do try and keep myself up to date with what's going on, and I do comment, and I go into the hospital occasionally and put my head around the door and talk to the medical director. I'm on 2 groups, one of which is about genomics. I have a very interesting next door neighbour, a female lawyer, who is doing work with NHS England and Dame Sue Hill and a few other people about genomics, and she's a consultant, and she's running webinar. I'm helping her with that and sitting in on the talks, which is absolutely fascinating. And they're international. They're people from all over the world, experts in genomic management. I'm also on a group with Cardiff University about looking at ICD-10, or it's going to be ICD-11, definitions of aging, about how much of it is natural and how much of that can we code, and how much is just a disease process. And it's actually quite an interesting discussion. So I'm doing that, but that's only a day every so often and a bit of reading. I'm being a grandparent, which is great fun. 4 kids, 13 down to 5, and we see them at least once a week each side, and I pick up the 13-year-old from school, so I'm learning all about Minecraft, and I'm learning all about all sorts of things and the hip new music. I'm a crafter. I've knitted all my life. My mother was a great crafter. I've knitted all my life. I make quilts. I sew. I'm embroidering at the moment. I keep wanting to learn how to draw because my mother was good at art. So as you can see, I'm not sitting about. I have the luxury of another house in the Lake District. We go up there. So I walk. I just live. I live a lot.
Which is absolutely fantastic, and I want to pull on that thread in a minute. Can I also bring Amelia in, because you mentioned at the beginning of that about your feelings about the current state of the NHS, as you are living it rather than I to take it forward. So I'll come back to my question in a minute, but before we get to that, Amelia, can I bring you in?
So my burning question really, Maggie, I think you said, I know I had the best of general practice, and I really hope that's not true. I hope that the best of general practice is yet to come. So just, yes. Tell me about what you had then that we need to recapture. What's your advice to me as a jobbing GP who wants to try and help everyone get back into the proper job?
I think that the problem is nationally strategic, in that nobody understands at the top levels what it is that we actually do, or I did, every day. There's absolute skills that we have to manage health and populations, our local populations, that we are. The word gatekeeper I used to hate, but in a way we actually not only kept the gate and managed the pressures, but we also were, how can I express it, given the time and the freedom to do everything we possibly could for the patient and not be reviled for it. Because at the moment, what I hate are the absolute lies that are, and you may have to edit this completely out, the absolute lies in the media about the fact that we're sitting on our back, you are sitting on your backside doing nothing, or for a huge wage. And I find that grossly insulting. I find that no true reflection of what you are doing, which makes your life absolutely, the atmosphere is such that a huge majority of your patients will think that that's what's happening, that didn't know how hard you worked during the pandemic behind closed doors, that if you had been open, you probably would all be dead. I mean, and that's a gross exaggeration, but you were running exactly the same risks as everyone in the hospital, exactly the same risk. But somehow that was ignored. It just means that the atmosphere is one of difficulty, followed by increasing demands that you do more. You're seeing, I can't remember, is it 4 million more patients a week or something incredible, absolutely incredible. A workload that I left at 66 because I couldn't see 60 patients a day anymore, which is what I was doing on my on-call days. I could barely see the 25 in the morning and the 25 in the afternoon, plus home visits, plus all the paperwork. And your employment is being decimated in the sense that the numbers are going down, not up. And they insist that you A, see everything and that you're not doing it well enough, B, that you supervise all these extra workers. I don't know in what time you're going to supervise all these extra workers that somehow are there to replace you. And your efficiency, triage, primary care is about triage. I'm getting emotional here, but primary care is about triage. And the best person to triage is the senior, most experienced person, who is the GP in a practice. And what we're doing is replacing that with people who haven't got that experience and haven't got the knowledge. And the triage then becomes increasingly inefficient. And there are papers about that as well. And we've lost continuity. One of the main things in general practice was continuity. I started with an individual list. We had, the 6 of us had individual lists. Did I get to know my patients? I got to know my patients. And so 25 years later, somebody comes in, and when he starts talking, I start not laughing, but smiling and saying, your mum came in with that. And you can't do that now, or you can do it less because you haven't got the time. This is a very long-winded way of saying we had more time to do a job that is becoming impossible, in my perception.
I think one of the things that you've spoken to there, which I have experienced in my own career as a GP, is about the trust of the profession. So I think the extent to which we are trusted has decreased, and what we do is absolutely dependent on us being trusted, that this sort of assumption of trust. So we don't have the same access to continuity, but I really need my patients that I've got 10-15 minutes with to come with a presumption of trust so that they can tell me the stuff that I need to know.
Yeah.
And so our relationship with our communities and with the rest of the NHS is preventing us from being able to do our job as well as we could because of that trust. So to me,
Yes.
yeah, I think you've spoken to that really well.
You kind of almost apologise for being so passionate, Maggie, which you should never do. And the common thread that I've seen is that passion that has gone through, and that's been in the face of adversity sometimes, and I'm sure you've had, in addition to national or sort of issues with, actually that's what it was in those times, in addition to that, I'm sure you've had personal things that have been going on. So for me, the thing that I'm really interested, as we sort of come to the end of this discussion, is what would you say are the sort of key things that have intrinsically motivated you? You kind of touch right from the very beginning, you go, not quite sure what it was, I just always wanted to be a doctor. And the one thing that I'm seeing through your journey, there's always been an intrinsic drive to move forward. You've never settled. You've never been complacent. You've never got off the bus and go, actually, this stop suits me now. I've done what I needed to do. And you still said now, the fact that, you're still doing life, which I think ought to be the title of your next book. What has been the common thread, do you feel, that is intrinsically motivated to give you the energy to see you through this absolutely fantastic journey that you've had professionally and possibly personally?
The motivation has just been in that I was so lucky with my upbringing. The atmosphere always was, we're here to learn, we're here to explore, we're here to experience, we're here to use the most of what we have. I played tennis as a 4 with my mother, father, brother and me. They ran a swimming club. I became a county swimmer. I'm a county champion in swimming. But that was just what we did. And so for 18 years before I went to London, that was all I knew. Being a woman wasn't necessarily negative for me, because it was always expected that I would succeed. So it's in your head. You're going to be all right. You're going to get on, because you can be gaslighted by your nearest and dearest. There can be cultural expectations. And can I say, the cultural expectations of Yorkshire towards women aren't the same as the inside of my family. So I've never known anything different. I think that's my motivation, and that it all worked. It might not have done, but it all worked. And yes, there was adversity. And yes, I did go for counselling at one point with a personal situation. Yes, I did have mentoring, but I always worked out a way to find myself some space and work it out. And I'm also very stubborn. I'm a Taurian. I'm very stubborn. So one situation in work, which went on for 18 months, 2 years, where I just sat there and did what I thought was right. I'm very strong on probity, which you can imagine is driving me mad at the moment with the current state of the world. But I'm very strong on probity. So I did things that I always thought were right. And that got me through an awful lot. But I know I can do it, because I always had to do it as a kid. And that's what's kept me going.
And I'm absolutely sure you've motivated lots of other people on your journey and given them the confidence to believe in themselves as well. So thank you very much, Maggie. So I'll hand over to Amelia for our final question then.
Thank you, Claire. So, I mean, I think this is quite a really important question for me, and I'm sure for the listeners as well, about what would your key messages be for people seeking to look to you for advice on how to have similar success?
Do your homework. I think that in any situation, do your homework. Always listen. Always respect. Everybody's different, as you said, Amelia. Everybody's different. And you learn that's one thing general practice teaches you. You meet every aspect of personality, behaviour and everything else. And you'll have that in your team. Always find out, explore what your team, who your team are. Take time out to find out what they are and who they are, because I think that's very important. Go on the shop floor, go and feed the patients, which I did as a non-exec, and so that I knew exactly what I was doing. Go and sit with the receptionists while you do your prescriptions, which I did every time, and listen to the talk and the gossip, and listen to the business, because you're actually seeing what's happening with the business as you're doing that. So I did that very regularly. Acknowledge that you are a leader, but your skills are your skills, and other people will have skills that are better than your skills in some areas. So I think that's the other thing, is always respect other people's skills and use them.
Lovely one to end on. Respect other people's skills and use them.
Yes.
I love that.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely crucial.
It fits really well with the new model, doesn't it, of general practice, with the diverse teams, and
yes,
I work with such a range of people.
Yes,
amazing.
It's a little old-fashioned, but I still think you need the person with the most skills holding the ring, which is different from what's trying to be attempted at the moment in some areas.
We've come to the end of episode 4. It is evident that even with the odds stacked against you, your skill sets and the right mindset can carry you through. However, attitudes towards women in medicine remains outdated for many generations, backgrounds and cultures, so this needs to be addressed to achieve real change in supporting women to aspire for leadership roles in health and social care. For those just starting off their careers or thinking of making a change, Maggie's top tips to recap are: read books to learn about people, discover how to find yourself, never stop doing and soak up as much as you can, make your own luck and stay positive, and finally, find people who align with your values. Thank you to Maggie, Claire and Amelia, who will surely be featured in other episodes. Until next time, stay in the loop.